Hello, 2414 listeners. This is Shane Welter here. In this week's episode, we're taking just a small break from our current series, Can We Trust the Bible, so that we can hear the life story, faith walk, testimony of our good friend, special guest at the show, Adam Schmelling. Next week, we'll be continuing our series, Can We Trust the Bible, and we'll be diving into the canonical books of the Bible, which books are in, which books are out. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for walking with us.
2414 is a podcast about finding hope and common ground through casual conversation. Like the friends on the road in the New Testament, in Luke chapter 24, verse 14, we want to walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. Thanks for walking with us.
Hey, welcome to 2414. There we go. Here I am. There you are. We're joined today at the table, Shane and I, we are joined, and good listeners and viewers, we're joined by Brenda and Adam. Brenda, like 7-time veteran of the show. How many times do you think you've been a friend of the show?
I think it's getting pretty close to 10, but it may not be quite at 10.
Okay.
I don't know.
Near on 10 times. And Today you've brought a plus one, the famed Adam Schmelling. Your husband of how long, Brenda? How long?
Of 3 years.
Really?
3 years and 1 month-ish. Yeah.
3 years. So, Adam, welcome, Brenda. Welcome, Shane. Glad you're here today. We're going to hear just Adam's story. The goal today is get to know people, get to know faith journey, life journey, see how things have been unfolding for these past 23 years or however ballpark you are. And
23.
Yes, that's what I was
Younger than Shane.
Younger than Shane, approximately.
Easily, yeah.
For those of you who are listening, I'll describe Adam as a bearded fella. Today it's a reasonable beard. I don't know, how would you describe that, Brenda?
Yes, appropriate length.
Appropriate.
Right now. Yep.
So it's more than stubble, but less than he lost his razor for the last quarter.
And stuck in the woods for years. Yeah.
Like that. Did you hear about that guy they found in the ocean this week?
No.
The guy from Australia was stranded at sea with his dog for 3 months, and some Mexican fishing crew found him. He's just been eating raw fish.
Like on an island?
No, like that drift in the ocean.
What?
Yeah, his boat died, and he was just floating out there for months. He had a beard.
How was he catching fish?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I just looked at the picture. I'm like,
And
that's
his
a good
dog survived too?
I didn't read it. I looked at I saw the headline. I'm an American with limited time. I saw the picture and I read the headline, and now I feel qualified to tell other people about the event. So
right.
I'm not prepared for follow-up questions. All right. All that's to say is Adam's got a good beard. He's a good dude. He's graciously joined us today to share. Before that, we're going to do some highs and lows, and back by popular demand, one quick round of outburst. Shane, would you kick us off for lows, highs? What's something that's been not so great in your last day, week, month, season, 6 minutes?
So I'm prepared for this one because it's funny, maybe sad.
Oh.
I don't know.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah.
This is going to be hilarious.
Just you wait. No, well, I'll start with high because that's simpler. High is just that I'm excited for Lauren. She's in Hawaii right now. She's celebrating her brother's 21st birthday because he's there for the summer. He's in Hawaii for the summer. Their whole family, they're all going to Hawaii to celebrate with him.
Why is he there for the summer?
His girlfriend asked if he wanted an internship job over the summer.
On the main Hawaii.
Yeah, on the big island in Hawaii. So he was like, yeah, cool. Why would I not do that?
Yeah.
So he's living with some members of their church or something.
Cool.
It's crazy just how I look at it on Google Maps. It's just this tiny little suburb in this big island. It's crazy. It blows my mind. But it's really cool. She's there now, so I'm happy for her.
I like that your high is, you said it very positively, like, my wife is getting to go to Hawaii, and I'm such a twisted person. My first thought is Shane's high is his wife's gone for a few days.
Oh.
I was going to say, he said yesterday he hates Hawaii.
Yeah.
So he's
really
glad he
the
didn't
worst.
get to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't hate Hawaii. I love Hawaii.
You do you, Shane Walter.
No, okay, but I was gonna say the low was I got home from summer nights last night, and earlier last morning, like the power flickered or something. It was like, oh, weird. I got home, there's no power, and I was like, huh. Except this tiny corner of the house, which is the kitchen appliances and the oven light. I'm like, okay.
You're reading by the oven light.
So it got more sad because I was like, all right, I got things that work. So I was like, I'm gonna grill some onions and put them on a burger. And then I started like the process. And then I realized all the kitchen appliances are like half power. Oh. And so these onions are just like warming in butter. But the George Foreman, my like burger grill thing worked.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I cut up an entire onion and put it in this warm butter water. So I made that. So I just like, I'm going to use them some way. So
Sad dinner for one.
Yeah. Well, and then it started getting darker and I was like, wait, I can't eat in my living room because it's dark. Yeah. So I was just eating under the oven light, just in like these burgers in the kitchen. I was, this is so sad.
That's awesome.
The first day Lauren's gone, I was like,
good
this
start.
Is terrible.
Literally the light in your life.
Oh,
yeah, right. And then at 1 a.m. I heard some guy like outside in the power, like, and then like heard the power come back on. I was like, oh, because I realized too, my phone was at like 10%. I'm like, oh, my alarm is gonna go off. Like,
awesome.
No. So it was a weird night. Not what I was expecting at all.
I love it.
A lot of darkness.
A lot of darkness. Thank you for sharing, Shane.
Yeah, it's too funny to not share.
Yeah, we also still have our George Foreman that we've had for 18 years plus. And I love the fact that previous generations knew George Foreman as a world champion boxer. And my kids just, get out the George Foreman.
It's a grill.
That's the countertop grill that cooks both sides of the burgers at the same time.
What will your legacy leave behind?
Oh man, and I still remember the commercials when he was selling those things on infomercials. The George Foreman lean, mean, fat reducing grilling machine.
Oh, I just think of the Office episode where Michael burns his foot on the George Foreman grill.
Of course, there's an Office episode for the George Foreman. Why not? All
right, we'll give our guests a couple more minutes to think about their highs and lows. I'll jump in here. My low, it's a little bit vague, but I've been disappointed in my resiliency. Like when I face some moment of adversity or discouragement, it feels like I'm not managing that well, and it brings me down sooner and like at a less threshold than I wish it would. As opposed to like, if I see my kids are discouraged, I'm like, suck it up. That wasn't that big of a thing. Like, you're better than that. And then the same thing is happening to me. I'm like, oh, somebody said something rude. Yeah, of course they did. People are dumb. Like, nobody's thinking. And love is really hard. And I know this, and yet it doesn't seem to take much right now to really just bring me down. So not feeling very resilient. That's my low. My high is a very simple high. I've so enjoyed the warm sunshine like on my skin this week. And as I was thinking about that this morning, I realized how much energy and money I put into like joy or pleasure or fun. And then as I thought this morning, hey, what's been a high for me recently? It was the first thing I thought of was, the sunshine on my skin. It wasn't, I'm so glad I have these 3 streaming services or a PS4 or like all the things that I do enjoy. But the first thing came to my mind was the sun feels nice. So that's my high right now is sunshine. Yeah. All right, Brenda, lows, highs.
Yeah. Easy high right now is we're going camping today. Literally after work, we've got the truck loaded up, so we'll just head straight there. And as soon as we come back from camping, we're here for a morning, and then we're heading off to Montana and going to Glacier, which Shane, you were just at recently. So we'll get to go there for the first time. So that's an upcoming high.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited for that.
Is packing and preparation fun for you? Is it stressful? What's that like?
It started this morning.
Okay. Last minute, perhaps?
No, we got ahead of it a little bit.
Adam started this morning.
Started like sorting things
Well, I
and
was smoking salmon
yes, putting it aside.
and water in the yard.
Yeah, we had to do that this morning. So this morning it felt like a little bit of a scramble to get everything to fit and load it up. And are we forgetting anything? If we are, we forgot it. So yeah, probably a little bit stressful, but it's okay. But that's a high, upcoming high.
Cool.
Yeah, that'll be fun. And low, I think just been a harder last couple of weeks, been more probably emotional and just stressed over different stuff. So that's not been fun, but hopefully going to get better soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Lows, highs, something discouraging, encouraging, frustrating, joyful?
I think mine are, my high and low are both the same thing. So I left my job yesterday.
That was planned. You didn't like walk out.
No. That was all planned.
I'm out.
It was planned 6 weeks ahead of time.
Okay.
And it's a high because it's cool, I guess, in the sense that like my commute was really long for a while there. Like yesterday took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to get to work.
Ooh. Oh. One way.
One way.
Yeah.
And that was a regular thing. I mean, not 2 hours and 45 minutes, but
Couple
there
hours.
was a few times that got over 2 hours. And
Wow.
yeah, I'll elaborate on that a little more.
Yeah.
But
Shane could walk to work in 2 hours.
Could.
so the new job that I'm going to is 20 minutes away.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. So that's awesome. That's the high, I suppose. Low. The team up there was the best team I've ever worked on. So like a lot of young, super motivated people want to stay in the area and very good at what they do.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, to walk away, then I give I give back my car, my phone, my laptop.
It was never yours.
It was never mine, but
Yeah.
if you want to start thinking about things more, get rid of all that stuff.
So you've got time in your
That's
head?
what it is. Like yesterday, Brenda's like, all right, I'll be right back. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and
Sit here.
take a nap on your recliner because I've got nothing else to do.
Wow.
Like you can't even go on your phone. And it's crazy.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Was that your high or low or both?
It's both.
Okay,
So
yeah.
like
That sounds amazing.
It's a low in the sense that I would say since I left that team, like it's kind of a bummer. I've never left a job in the middle. The last one that I left, they were going to transfer me anyway. So I'm like, well, I don't need to go where you want me to. Like there's no need to stay with the company.
Yeah.
This is the first one I've ever left like halfway through. Not halfway, but 3/4 of the way through.
Because there's a certain job you're working on, like a
Yeah.
a
I like to
contract.
finish it.
Yeah.
And you had to give someone else your to-do list of
Yeah.
things that you were still working on. Usually you're on the other end
on
of
the
that.
receiving end of that one. Yeah. So it's different. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it yet.
It's a big transition. And how long till you start your next gig?
So that starts on the 31st.
So
Okay.
about a week and a half.
So a week and a half.
Vacation
Yeah.
with no car and no phone, and no laptop, no iPad.
Yeah.
Good thing you got me.
sounds like the yard is going to be looking pretty good. Those trees will be well groomed. All right. Well, before we get to hear more about Adam's life, we're gonna do one round of Outburst. So, Adam, here's what Outburst is. I'll describe it and show it to Adam, so those of you who are first-time listeners can get caught up to speed. Outburst is the game of verbal explosions. We found this game on campus here at St. Luke's, and we decided we're going to commandeer it for the podcast. And it was copyrighted 1980 something, 6 or 7, so late 80s. And so it's got a Family Feud vibe to it, where there's a category and then there's 10 answers. We don't know how they came up with the 10 answers. We don't know if they pulled people in the street, or just some random dude is like, I'm going to make up this game. Here are 10 things I think of. So there's a word or a category. Then there's this magic super secret red decoder so that you can't see what the answers are until you slide them into this secret decoder magic feat of technology that will reveal the 10 answers. So we don't know how the game is actually played. We've never played the real game. We've never bothered reading the rules.
No.
But our adaptation is we take this, we think is a 30-second timer. We flip it over, and we see how many of the 10 items we can come up with before we run out of time.
I've played this before.
Have you?
Okay.
I recognize that.
The red decoder tray.
Technology from the 80s.
Yeah, it's cutting edge. I remember as a kid, like there were like these spy kits you could buy, and it was like now you're like a spy because you've got a piece of red, semi-clear plastic. Like this is how they did it. All right, I'm ready for the call.
This is how the Cold War went down. Red decoders.
So I'm just gonna flip through this, pull one out, read it, and then flip it. And together, all four of us are going to see if we can find the 10 answers they want us to find. I will try to write down some over here. Shane can try to write down some, and we'll see how many we get. All right. Do we want a silly one? Easy, medium, hard? What do we want?
You've got categories? Or like...
All right, Adam, do you want something easy, medium, or hard?
Am I writing this?
I just feel like writing.
We don't have to pen.
It's primarily a game of verbal explosions. All right. Easy, medium, hard.
Let's go medium.
Okay, medium. All right.
It's been a long time.
Medium in this could mean anything.
All right. Here we go.
All right.
I'm going to read the category, and I'm going to flip the timer. Friends at home, you can, maybe you're out for a run right now or a walk.
Start yelling
I'd
down.
encourage you to play along.
Start yelling.
If you're on public transportation, it's not too late to tap the person next to you and say, hey, I'm going to play a game of verbal explosions. Would you like to join me? This is
Not weird at all.
We are building community here, one episode at a time. All right. The category is occupations that begin with the letter S.
Secretary.
Oh, okay. Here we go. And we're going. Brenda,
All right.
secretary.
Scientist.
Wow.
Wow. All right.
Social worker.
Social work. Okay.
Secretary, scientist, social worker, sewer, seamstress,
Ooh.
Oh, Smither. I don't know.
Smith, the smithy,
Smithy.
student,
Yep.
Shopkeeper.
shopkeeper. It's awesome.
There's a
Secret
sociologist,
shopper.
right?
Secret Service agent,
Sociologist.
Secret Service, sociologist,
Security officer?
security, Secretary of State.
Secretary.
That's weird. It's secretary, I guess.
Shopkeeper. Did we ever say
We
that?
said yes.
We said that.
Shopkeeper. Slinger, slaughterhouse,
Secret shop.
slaughterhouse attendant,
Sacrifice.
Sandwich maker.
sandwich maker. We are going to
Sandwich
get
artist.
sandwich artist. Oh, and time.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Adam, how many do you think we got of the
I
10?
don't know.
You got 0 to 10. There's 10 answers. Top 10 answers are on the card. We said a lot of things.
We said a lot of things. I couldn't think of very many. I'll say
Yeah,
five.
we this side of the table said many things.
Yeah.
You said 5. You think we'll get 5?
I think we'll get
Brenda?
6.
6? Shane? He's usually pretty pessimistic.
I'm gonna guess we missed some obvious ones. I'll say
Yeah.
5 as well.
Gosh, I said 8 last time and I was very wrong. I'm going to say 8 again.
Did you say 8 for like people attempted assassinate?
No, it was things that smell.
Oh, that's what it was.
Things you recognize by their scent.
I don't think
And they
we'll
were all
get
bad
8.
things.
Yeah, they
Nothing was good smell.
All right, here we go.
I'm going to guess we did miss some obvious
Yeah.
ones.
Okay, occupations. Oh man,
Yeah.
that begin.
This game doesn't have to be right either.
the letter S.
We found that out early.
All right, it's really hard to read. This thing's getting old. Number 1, school teacher.
Oh.
I don't think we got that.
You said
No.
student.
We did.
It's the
not
opposite. It's
teacher,
like
yeah.
literally the
It's
opposite.
close, though.
Okay, we didn't say it. Number 2, stripper. We did not say that.
We're a church.
Number 3, street sweeper.
Street sweeper.
I mean, that's more of like machinery.
That's double S. We did not get a street. Yeah. Number 4, sanitation employee.
Sanitation employee.
Okay, it's not off to a good start. Number 5, streetwalker.
That's not an
That's not even-
occupation.
Is that like a lady of the night? Is that what that
Yeah, I
means?
think
Okay,
so.
moving on. Number
my-
6, singer.
Oh.
Thanks, vocal performance specialist Shane Welter, for showing up on
Hardly a career.
that one. Occupation's very generous.
Very
All right.
generous.
Number 7, salesperson.
Salesperson.
We have not got any of these yet, have we?
No.
Number 8, sailor.
Sailor?
That's a top 10 occupation.
Top 10 occupations.
According
Sailor.
to who, though?
1987,
80s people.
this guy. Number 9, shoemaker.
What is this? This is in 1780. This is.
This
I
is
did
the
say-
1980s,
you did
and we
say
didn't take that into
cobbler.
consideration.
You did say smithy. To be fair.
Watch that be 10. What?
And number 10, a sculptor.
We got none.
We got shut out for the first time. We got more on Richard Nixon than we did on occupations beginning with the letter S.
Wow.
Sculptor.
I thought we were going to get 8. We had so many. We said so many.
Secretary, social
We had
worker,
so many good ones.
sewer, shopkeeper. Like, what?
Wow.
That's
That was grim.
Yep.
I'm using
I would
them.
like to observe a moment of silence for the shame that was that last 30 seconds of effort. All right, well, let's pretend that never happened. Our guest today is Adam Schmelling and his wife Brenda. I don't know, Brenda, if you're quite a guest. You're a friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show.
You're a +1 of our guest. You're a foil that he can bounce truth off of.
Yes.
So that if there are any corrections, emendations, clarifications that need to be offered,
Yes.
you're the voice of truth.
I'll offer my input.
Yeah.
I'd go a step further and say, if I go too far into anything,
Reel
just like,
you back in.
kick me under the.
Is there a stop sign? Like, if Brendan knows where the story's going, just like,
Well,
you can't kick him under the table. The
I know,
table's
it's
too
like-
well built for
yeah.
that.
It's on record now.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's like I've told the story before, but it's like nobody's recording this. So now everyone can listen.
Yeah. So, Adam, maybe kind of get a running start. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in a small town called Lodi.
Lodi.
Yeah. So
Now,
I was-
that's not in California, or is that in
Nope,
California?
it's in Wisconsin.
Isn't there a Lodi, California?
There is.
Okay.
and Italy.
And Italy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Nobody's probably thought that, though, have they? Lodi,
Unless
Italy?
you're from Lodi, then probably not.
Okay. All right. So you
Lodi.
grew up in Lodi, Wisconsin.
Yep, 3,000 people. So, like, small town atmosphere, I guess. And, in all honesty, I don't really remember a whole lot from my childhood growing up. I don't know. It's interesting. But lots of outdoor stuff. Hunting, trapping. Yeah.
And I guess for listeners, people who in the Seattle area, what would be the difference between hunting and trapping?
And me, I'm curious. I don't know. I picture the bear trap, like the big scary metal spring loaded, and I picture like the little string, like the loop-de-doos that rabbits run through and get caught.
Yeah.
Okay.
The biggest difference, I suppose, might be offensive. In hunting, you're shooting them.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Right? In
Yeah.
trapping, most of the time they're still alive when you get there.
So you got to kind of finish the job.
okay.
But trapping is mostly like fur-bearing animals. So we would take the fur and then sell it.
Oh, okay.
To your friends, to some clothing maker.
I believe Russians.
To I don't even know what that means, Adam.
So
It's a very black market in Wisconsin.
there were some issues that happened that I can't elaborate on just because I really don't know all
Okay,
the facts. But
that's fair. It's best not to speak.
it went to the
we don't
North
know.
American Fur Auction.
Okay.
And we would bring it to just a big warehouse. They would bring it to Canada, and it would get sold in a worldwide auction.
Part of the global economy as a young child.
Yeah, it was big. And I guess from what I understood, like the Russians were the big buyers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So you grew up in Lodi, Wisconsin, hunting, trapping.
Yep.
And
Going to school, and then
you have siblings?
I have 3 sisters, and one older, 2 younger. And
One
they're-
older, 2 younger.
Yep.
You kind of had to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. So they're all married with a bunch of kids at this point.
Okay.
Like every time we go home for Thanksgiving, like there's more kids.
There's more.
There's always more.
They're loud. There's so many of them.
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
You can love them and be annoyed. Those are not mutually exclusive things.
It's nice at the end to be able to walk out and be like, this is done.
This is done.
But Yeah.
I'm going to go tend to my plants at home.
You're gone most of the day anyway when we go there for Thanksgiving.
So I go home for deer season. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving happens during deer season.
Okay.
We've got like a lot of acres of private property that we can hunt on. So like all the places that we've been trapping for and hunting for the last 30 years.
Cool.
Do you keep all your equipment back in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Okay. Like fly with like these Tupperware containers, or
I
like
brought the gun home so I could target practice, because if you take a lot of time off, it's not good.
Yeah.
And then I didn't really use it, so then it was like I might as well just bring it home and use this smaller one.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
My deer rifle's like a cannon.
It
Just
is a cannon.
unnecessary to bring to the shooting range.
I appreciate the restraint.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Lodi, Wisconsin, hunting, trapping, a few sisters who now have litters of children. And then what? How, you're not in Wisconsin anymore. How'd you get out here? I know there's lots of years in between.
Yeah. So I went to school for engineering.
That seems really broad to me, by the way. I hear engineering. I'm like, are you designing robots? Are you paving streets? Are you,
structures.
Okay.
So civil engineering, but I went to school for civil because there's a lot of options coming out of it.
Civil engineering structures.
Yeah. So like you could go the structural way. You could go, I guess, like water management, like cleaning.
Okay.
Like sewer stuff.
Yeah.
You could go that route. Or you could go...
Is that one of our things? Sewer sanitation
Yeah,
employee?
like sanitation stuff. Or you could go like...
Let's see how many of these we can work into the conversation today. Brenda,
if
you're
you
next.
like dirt, like you could be geotech engineer from there. Like there's a lot of different... It opens it up to a lot of options.
Like you could be a scientist, maybe?
Sure, if you wanted to keep going with it. Yeah. So that's why I went for civil, just because there's a lot of options coming out.
See.
And ended up kind of finishing with just civil engineering and construction management, because I've always been into construction.
Okay.
Like from, maybe 4 years old, 3, 4. Like we used to go to the mall when I was a kid. I remember that, and watch them put up Christmas lights in the mall. Like the construction workers.
Yeah.
And I was like, I assume my mom was walking circles.
Okay,
'Cause
mall
I think
walker.
that's what they do. Yeah, you
Which
know,
is different than a
what I'm
street
talking about.
walker.
Yes,
Mall walker.
Very different.
very different.
We can be marking these, Brenda. It's like,
just actually trying to use.
Oh.
But I like to watch the construction workers, so it was kind of determined at a young age. Like this is what I want to do. Construction of some sort.
and these are, I'm picturing Bob the Bat Hilder and Bob the Builder hat, tool belt, and these guys on ladders hanging Christmas lights at the mall.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So was it the building part of it or the planning part of it that intrigued you?
At the time, I think it was probably the building part.
Okay.
It just changed as I went further and further into school, because I was going to go into the union in Wisconsin. They got the Carpenters Union, and I guess just unions in general. It's a new thing coming out here, because I didn't get far into it in Wisconsin. But I took the test, and I did really well. And my teacher at the time was like, most of the people that do this don't do that well.
So one of the few.
And he was an engineer, and he's like, maybe consider going back for engineering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was like, all right, let me look into it. And that's what I ended up doing.
Okay.
And where'd you go to school again?
UW-Madison
All right.
in Wisconsin. Yeah,
So that school teacher encouraged you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. He's
Yeah.
pretty much, because I was just going to go straight to work out of high school. And then he was like, maybe think about this, because this is what I do.
Yeah. So what's an entry level, like what does a normal day, normal week season look like when you started working coming out of college? Are you physically building things? Are you at a computer just with CAD all day long? Are you managing schedules of other people? What's like the actual day to day?
So I guess coming out of school, you know nothing.
Yeah.
I've realized at this point that like what school taught me was how to problem solve and how to use your resources. So you've got a lot of resources, and like on a team, that they would put me on. You've got people that have been doing this for like 30, 40 years, right? So use them. Go talk to them. If you don't know the answers, but they have a better idea than you do. And that's really what I've learned at this point is like, because they give you a bunch of math problems that you don't know how to solve. I'll never use calculus again.
Right.
I have no need. But at the time, I had to use the resources, figure out how to solve the problem. So now looking at it, I'm like, that's what I do on a daily basis. I see all kinds of problems, and the first thought in my mind is like, who would know how to do this? Because I have an idea on how to fix it, but who would know better than me? And then I'll go sit down with them and start talking.
Yeah. Brenda, have you heard all this before? Do you know this? Or they're like, oh, I'm seeing new things about him.
I think you're saying some things differently, and there are things in the conversation like just growing up that I didn't know. I didn't know the fur trade type stuff. So
I don't get too far into that. That could be offensive to people.
Yeah, sure. But even hearing hearing you talk about work, I mean, I hear it every day in a certain sense, but it is different to hear you saying it to other people. Yeah.
So I should ask you, Brenda, is there anything about his professional life that you think I should ask about or the people might want to hear about? You're married to an engineer. Is there anything, are there, I don't know, opportunities or burdens that come with that in your marriage or your life?
I think it maybe ask, or I guess I could just ask you, like, how is it shutting it down at the end of the day? So do you take your work home with you, or are you able to keep it at work?
I feel like I have been pretty good at keeping it at work. It's not the easiest thing because, like, my mind moves at 1,000,000 miles a minute. At work, it's worse. And I might come home and vent for a minute, but then I do my best to just shut it off because I don't want to keep thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's some jobs that you literally clock in, clock out, and when you leave, you don't have to think about it at all until you're back there the next day. And there's other jobs where even if your job isn't asking you to keep working on stuff, you're still thinking about it, thinking ahead to the next day. So even if you're done venting to me about it, do you keep thinking about it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm still thinking about the job I just walked away from.
Well, I mean, that was just yesterday, so.
And there's still things that I'm like, oh, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't have to worry about it anymore, but
Still in your head.
Still in my head.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing. I worked at the mailroom in college, and I clocked out, didn't think twice about it. You know, like, gosh, I dream about that sometimes.
Well, and I'll say the people that I work with. So when we first moved up here, we lived across the street. I walked to work every morning, and the guys at work were like, "How can you do that? You're okay just living on the job site?" And yeah, one, because I could walk to work in the morning. Two, because looking at it didn't bring it back into my mind. Like, I was okay to just shut everything down during the weekend and do my own thing. And I think I do pretty good at it.
Nice. So you went to school, engineer. You've been married 3 years and something you said earlier. How did you meet Brenda? What was courtship like? What's marriage been like?
Okay, so I lived in Minnesota for a year. So right out of college, I moved to Minnesota and started building Scheels Sporting Goods.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Really?
They have the Ferris wheel inside.
Yes.
They're like the random $1 Ferris wheel with a wooden token.
The first person I've talked to that's like, oh, yeah, I know what that is.
We used to go there all the time in Omaha. And
oh, yeah, of course.
Quick story there. One of the first times we were there, one of my children thought it'd be it's like a department store, hunting store, miscellaneous thing. One of my kids thought it'd be funny to hide, and they went like in the clothing section and disappeared. And that was really scary as a parent. And I said, we can't come back here for a long time because you scared me. And I'm a really mean dad. So every time we drove by Scheels and the Ferris wheel, they'd ask, I'm like, no, we can't go back in there. Do you remember why? Because I was hiding from you. And I was like, are you going to do that again? No. And so I kind of shoved their nose in it several times. by several times, I mean like months of driving by of like, we're not going in there. That really, really scared me, and that's not okay. So at some point we got to go back. And you ride this Ferris wheel in the middle of the store. So yeah, you were building shields. That's
Ours
cool.
didn't have a Ferris wheel, but it had all the games.
Okay.
Because they've got tons of games in there. And one of the best parts of that job is so the grand opening was set when we started construction. That I will
You
say
had a
also.
completion date and the opening date. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Get to work.
not to throw shade at anybody else or any other team, but that was the only job I've ever worked on that ended on time.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the day it was supposed to be done, we had our grand opening.
Yeah.
And it was like, here it is.
I don't think that's common in construction.
No, it's really not. And then, like, for me, walking around at this grand opening thing, I'm like, we missed right there. We didn't that.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
But that's all right. Nobody else really.
But it was on time.
Yeah. And
The building is in rubble today. No.
no,
Okay,
I don't
good.
think so. I don't know. You can pick it up. But they had all these games in there, and the owner was like, well, the owner's rep was like, if we open and have our grand opening and these games break down, that's a problem. So play them. Play them as
Make sure
much
it
as you
works.
can.
Test
and I'm
them
like,
out.
Break them in.
okay. So like I'm playing all these shooting gallery games, and like they had bowling and like the big screen where like you're hunting animals and stuff. And this is a blast for me.
That's
and I
cool.
remember because at one point they were training all their employees that were going to work in the store. Because we kind of turned it over to them, because during the grand opening, like, these people have to be working. They have to have workers. So they were training them all, and I'm sitting there playing all these games and stuff, and one of the guys walked up and was like, hey, what's your name? And I'm like, I'm Adam. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, I work for... It was.
They just thought you were some dude off the street.
Yeah, well, he thought
Some
that
bearded
he
hunter
thought-
wandered in.
I'm pretty sure he thought that I was one of their workers being trained. So
Oh,
it's
just
like,
not on
slacking off.
task.
yeah, like you're just gonna stand over here and play
That
games.
badge number.
And I'm like, oh, I work for the contractor, and he's like, oh, okay. Like I've seen emails from you, I just didn't know. Like I didn't know your face. And I'm like, yeah, it's all good, dude. I can play these.
I love, by the way, the running start. I asked, how did you meet your wife?
I was
And
gonna
here's
say-
where we are.
No, we'll get there.
How did you get from Minnesota to your next spot?
So when I was there, it was really cold in the
True.
winter, and
I've heard.
like negative 52 wind chill. And at the end of that job, they were like, well, we don't really have more work. So we could either move you down, because they were out of Nevada. So we could move you to Nevada and hope that we get more work, or you can start looking for a job now. And basically, like, they were willing to continue to employ me while I was looking for another job.
Wow, that seems pretty awesome.
Right. And they were really good. And I'm like, all right. So I started just applying everywhere south of Tennessee.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, it's
Reaction against Minnesota.
it's warm.
Over the negative 50.
Yeah. So I was like, if I'm going to go somewhere new, it's going to be somewhere warm.
That's good.
So the company that I got a job with was out of Florida,
Okay.
but in Houston area. So I worked there for a year on a chemical plant, which was rough, different.
Okay.
Commercial construction. So I put up a blast-proof building. It was pretty neat.
Oh, wow.
Turns out things explode on chemical plants, right?
Jeez.
They don't talk about it.
I never thought about that.
So at the end of that job, they were like, well, we're going to transfer you now to civil construction, so building bridges.
Okay.
Oh, and that's where it's kind of like in civil engineering, different options. So I could build buildings, I could build bridges, I could
Okay.
just do underground stuff. So in this case, they were like, well, we're going to transfer you to building bridges down in South Texas.
South Texas.
South Texas, like 20 minutes north of the border on the
Ah.
Gulf Coast.
Wow.
And that's where I went.
What was the name of the town?
Harlingen.
Harlingen.
Yeah. I've heard it on a podcast that I listen to called Harlingen.
But they're wrong.
They're wrong.
They're wrong.
Yeah.
They're wrong.
It's
Hey,
Harlingen.
It's Harlingen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you go down to Harlingen.
Yeah, to build a vertical lift drawbridge. It was cool.
Ooh.
Okay.
I would never do it again.
What was your position in that? Like the
Engineer?
head, like
I was the field engineer. So at that point, when you start in the industry, like you're just learning. You come out and you don't know anything. They don't teach you in school like how to build anything. They teach you how to look at plans and then how to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So then they basically hand you a set of plans and you're like, all right, here we go. You start looking and then you start asking questions. And eventually, 10 years later, you actually understand things.
I think my seminary training was the same way. People sometimes assume like you go to seminary and they just teach you all the books of the Bible. Like they don't. They teach you how to think and how to read and how to interpret so that you can do it. I mean, I had some books of the Bible. I was like, hey, here's a class on Matthew, so you can do the other 65 now. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of the Bible in general is just kind of interpretation.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So sorry, I didn't mean to talk about myself. Just as an analogy, if I understand that they teach you how to think and problem solve so that you can do it. So you're in Harlingen. You got the vertical bridge taken care of, and you go putt-putting one day, and you see this woman, birdie the 10th hole.
So, kind of close. We'll say
Not at all.
kind of close. I don't know. We'll get there. So, eventually, living down there, I'm like, all right, I should probably, I'm getting older. I should probably meet somebody. So I signed up for some dating apps.
Yeah.
And I think I went out on like 2 dates, and then ended up on Bumble connecting with her.
So Bumble is an app?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's an app where the girl has to talk first.
Okay.
So as shy as she seems, she said hi.
is that what
I
what you
did.
said? Just
I'm picturing like a Zoom
I don't remember.
gesture.
Probably like a hi, how's it going? You match first,
Yeah.
but then further to.
Do you remember your first line? Was it nice beard?
He didn't have a beard
I didn't
back
have
then.
a beard.
No, this is a more recent thing.
Okay.
The beard, yeah. So I said hi first, and we talked for probably a couple of weeks, and I was out of town a lot at the time, but we just kind of kept talking until we finally we're gonna meet up for a first date. And
Which was what, Adam? Let's see if he remembers.
Oh, we went to a bar.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So
Like a line dancing bar? That's what I'm picturing right now.
I don't remember
No.
where I was, but I got home
just like a dive bar.
Nice.
and we were texting, and then you got home. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what you were doing either, but I was like, oh, I could go for a drink. You want to go out for a drink? And you're like, yeah, sure.
And is Harlingen a big town, small town?
No, it's pretty small. All those towns down there are.
It's
all
bigger
pretty
than where I
small.
grew up.
Yeah,
It's like, I think there's like 60,000 people in Harlingen, something like that.
but it's all these small towns that are kind of connected. So altogether, it's a bigger area called the Rio Grande Valley, the RGV for short.
Yeah.
But when we first started talking, we didn't know that we were actually neighbors.
Well, yeah. So hold on. I was going to get to
Okay.
that. So she's like, can you? I'm like, all right, well, I'll come pick you up.
Yeah.
What,
I don't know.
Where do you live? And she's like, something about the gym. Gosh, how did we get into that?
We'd already talked about
So
that.
the gym at our apartment was broke down or under construction.
So when
She's
I
like,
mentioned that
yeah,
first,
I'm like, oh, so is mine.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're in the same complex?
in the same complex.
Yeah, not the same building, but I could see I could see her back door from my front door.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Not creepy.
Not creepy. Gosh, I'm so glad I'm not dating so many. What's creepy or not? Should I pick you up? Is that what serial killers say? I don't know.
Well, and her parking spot was 5 cars down from mine, and we had never seen each other.
It'd be funny if you complained all the time. This big blue truck's always over the line.
It's just funny. We wouldn't have met if it weren't for the app. Even being neighbors, we had totally different schedules. We'd never seen each other. And then come time for the first date, well, let's meet by the mailboxes, I guess. And then I got there first, and I was just fumbling with my phone, just so nervous. I'm just standing here by this mailbox. Is that him? No, that's not him. Is that him? Okay, he's walking this way.
Shorter than he looked in his picture.
And then, okay, I guess this is okay. We're meeting for the first time. I'm just going to get into his truck and we're going to go to this place. But if he's a creep, I know where he lives. I know where to find him.
Did you have an exit strategy? Did you have a friend? Will you text me in an hour?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. We were going someplace that was really close, and I think I just trusted him. we're coming back to the same place. Like if anything, like can't run off with me. I don't know.
Did you have an exit strategy, Adam?
I was going to say, actually, no.
In case she turned out to be.
I just threw all caution to the wind.
Okay. Well, so yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. At some point, Adam, I'm assuming, decides in your own head, I think I might want to marry this woman. Was there a moment or a turning point, or it's like, well, here we are.
So one time, that was in Harlingen. I wouldn't say at that point I was like, all right, we're going to get married. But that was when I was like, all right, she's a good one. We were talking. I don't even remember what we were talking about. But it was like closer than me and you.
All right.
And she was talking, and the piece
Shane,
of
why don't you get a little closer so we can get a visual? I'd like to reenact this a little bit better.
So the piece of gum that was in her mouth fell out.
Onto your couch.
Onto my couch. In the mid conversation. And I was like, all right.
That's the moment?
That was the moment that I'm like, all
moment.
right. Because both of us cracked up at that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so that's a thing.
Yep.
This is the woman I'm going to marry.
Yep.
It was a long fur couch. It's still, that gum is still in there.
Whoever's got that couch now.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, we left it.
Yeah, we
left it down in South Texas.
Yeah.
Donated.
That's awesome.
Well, I'll share my moment. Not that you asked, but
How could it be any different?
it was so different. I knew.
Was it
that
before or after the gum episode?
It was after.
Okay.
I think it was after. Yeah. But it was Easter, and he had set up this scavenger hunt in his apartment with like Easter eggs, and there were clues, and all the clues had to do with like stuff about us or stuff about me, and I had to follow the clues all around his apartment, and I thought it was the best. I'm like, no one's ever done that for me, and I'm like, all right, that's right. Maybe I have some stronger feelings here.
All the men listening right now, it's not too late, even if you've been married for 10 years,
Scavenger
20
hunt.
years,
Scavenger.
pull off a scavenger hunt. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
How that scavenger hunt ended.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
There was a rabbit.
like a stuffed animal
stuffed rabbit.
Mhm.
That he himself trapped?
Like a taxidermist? Like rat?
No, like
I
a
would not
stuffed
want that.
animal.
A stuffed animal.
A plush.
It was in a closet.
Stuffy, as the kids would say.
Hanging from the bar in the closet. This was like the final.
Hanging.
Like, this is what all clues led
Not a
to
noose, Shane.
this.
Not a noose.
No.
No,
There's
it
a
was
hand.
hanging by its hands on the bar in the closet with the poop emoji underneath it.
Poop emoji pillow underneath it.
And that was your moment.
The whole thing. Not that specific.
A taxidermy rabbit with...
I've matured a lot.
oh, my gosh.
No need. No.
Shane.
I was just going to say, how far into the relationship was this? Like, was this like 1 month in to a year in?
That was months in. I think that was the first year still.
I think so. It's
Yeah.
like 3 months.
3 months in.
Okay.
So I guess pretty early on, I think I knew anyway, like that this was a different relationship.
That's cool. One of the things I really enjoy about our conversations on this podcast is we don't have a script or an agenda. And listeners at home, I want to encourage you. Just having real conversation is so satisfying. So I don't like asking like leading questions. But Adam, when we bumped into each other, I think it was just this last Sunday, talking about recording today, you had mentioned in passing something like kind of God's hand in your life or seeing God at work. And I wanted to make sure we had some space just for you to go wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, I guess it's a good story. We haven't really touched on any of that yet.
Right, yeah, I realized that, man, we're like,
Yeah,
the
like-
clock is ticking,
Right,
and I didn't
okay.
even get to hear about like faith, journey, God in your life, any of that stuff.
Right. Okay. So, I suppose maybe I start that conversation with saying my life hasn't always been kid friendly.
Yeah.
So, like, maybe parents listening to this, listen to it first
Okay.
before letting your kids listen. Because, like, there are studies that show that when kids hear something that an adult has done, it would show them that it's an acceptable thing to do.
Yeah. Adam's not going to be graphic here.
No,
but
and I'll do my best to keep, like I said, this is on record here. I'm not going too far into things, but then.
But there are things in our lives that we're not proud of. We make mistakes.
Right. My past is my past. And
Yeah.
I'm not really going to shy away from it.
Yeah.
So, like, just maybe listen before letting your kids, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't want them thinking that it's a okay thing to do just because somebody else did it.
Maybe start like, how was church for you growing up?
Right.
Yeah.
So I grew up, we started going young. I was young to the Presbyterian church in my hometown. And it was good, like very good community. We were friends with everybody. We were the second row family.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. So
Up front.
not, we were late every Sunday.
By the way, listeners, if there are young families in your congregation, they might get there late. It's really hard to get there.
Hey, Mom, if you're listening, I'm sorry. We were late.
Yeah, you
a
made it though.
lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's why I'm pretty sure that's why my dad was like, "I'm not coming," because I'm not walking in late
To the second row.
to the second.
He'd rather not go at all
Yep.
if he was going to be late.
And he was also working, so
Okay.
like he ran a business. He started his own business, and was working long hours every day to keep things going. So anyway, good community at church. We were that second row family. We knew everybody. And I guess it was good growing up. Sunday school, went through confirmation there. Eventually, I started working, and I got a job for somebody that was at the church. And as a kid, got into some things that,
Bad choices.
sure, right? Every kid, I mean, not every kid, I guess, but it's childish things, and I made some bad choices. And one of those choices was to take things that didn't belong to me from my place of work.
Yep.
And it ended up in getting in a bunch of trouble
Yeah.
at 17 years old. And that caused the entire church community, and I can't say entire, because there's still some that we talk to, but the majority of them turned. And like, we kind of got shunned from not just the church, but the community.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I'm on my way out. And even my parents were kind of like, we're on our way out. But it was interesting and kind of turned me off to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The way that I've put it is like, everybody kind of deserves a second chance except me. Like, in that sense, it was like, you don't.
Yeah. Just like judgment and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that I'm...
yeah. You were wrong.
I was wrong.
Right.
I was wrong. Looking back
But
at
not
it, I'm
having
like,
mercy or forgiveness
No.
or kind of
so
compassion.
it was interesting, and it turned me off to the whole thing. The whole religious thing was kind of like, if that's how it is, then I don't need this.
Yeah.
Like, you can be religious outside of church. And I know, like, I've talked to people at this point that are like, yeah, but you kind of need that community. But I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sounds like your early impressions of it was that everyone had to be very hoity-toity, good, perfect people.
They all
like,
came off that way.
Yeah.
So then as soon as, like, somebody messed up, it was like, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, I don't know.
So where'd you go from there?
Yeah.
I went to college. So I guess I'll explain it step by step. So, like, I was into things that I shouldn't have been into. And from a young age, looking at it now, I'm like, I was young. I didn't get in trouble like that until 17. And then, really, I was court ordered to clean up.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a scared straight type moment. But looking back at it, it makes sense. It had to happen. So that's where I'm like, God's had a hand in this from a long ways back. Because as soon as I did that, then it was like, all right, my mind's cleared. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? I went to school for engineering. Right?
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have happened on the path that I was on.
Yeah.
So
there's a line in the book of Hebrews that God is a father who disciplines his children whom he loves. And if to not discipline is not loving. Discipline doesn't feel good. Correction or punishment isn't pleasant for either party. But to have some perspective and distance from that to go, oh, maybe that was actually for my good.
yeah. Right. And that's where I'm like, hindsight's 20/20. I can look back and be like, all right, a lot of stuff happened during that time that, like, maybe I shouldn't be here. Like, not just not here, but probably not alive.
Wow.
And I made it through the whole thing. And looking at it at this point, a lot of my friends didn't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. So I went to school for engineering. Kind of avoided the whole church scene at that point. I just focused on school, and
There's enough to keep you busy there, for sure.
When it was no longer court-ordered, I went back to my party ways.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I was still in school, and I was doing good. And, yeah. I mean, when I started working in Minnesota, the project manager and his family, they're a very tight family. And he was very religious. It was cool. Like, very Christian-oriented. And, like, his kids were homeschooled and learning, like, the creationist version of everything. And it was like, all right, this is interesting. Not necessarily what I was taught in school, but it's interesting to hear. So that kind of, like, opened up my mind a little bit more to things. Not that I was like, I need to start going to church every Sunday.
Let's not get carried away here.
Sunday was for sleeping in. And then when I moved down to Texas, I was kind of, at that point, that part was good too, because the plant that I worked on did regular drug testing. So it was like, any extracurricular activities are out.
Yeah.
Which was good at that point anyway, because I'm like, I'm getting older. I don't need to do that. And
A man turns 20, has to start thinking about things.
I mean, you'd be surprised. They catch up.
Yeah.
Like, as much as, like, as a kid, you think that you're invincible.
Right.
It catches up.
Yeah, so your regular testing, got a job down south?
Yep. And then so then I finished that job up, and, like, still not real far into the church thing. Not until I met Brenda. And then she's like, all right, well, you should, like, this is what I do for a living. You should come to church with me. And I'm like, okay, we could do that. I guess I'll give it a shot, right? Because I've been there as a kid, so I'm like, I know what church is. We went on Good Friday.
It's like your first time back in church for years.
Oh, wow.
For a reason.
Well, I was like, man, this has changed.
And you're down in Texas, too.
Yeah, but when I used to go, it was like a happy place.
Yeah.
This is not. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing here, but
The most depressing service.
nothing like my church.
I wanted him to see the difference. Like, let's come to this one so then Easter will be just that much more
Yeah.
big and light and really good. That was my thinking. Maybe I should have just brought you to Easter first.
I mean, it worked. I'll give you that.
That's your whole theme here. We're going to a dark place and finding some light at the end.
And right.
So, yeah.
So then
On brand.
we went to Easter, and it was like, okay, like, this is all happy again. Well, she worked for the people that she worked for in Texas kind of made it so we'd go see like a dozen different pastors. Right? So, like, we weren't just at one church. We were all over the place, which was also kind of neat because I'm like, at the time, I suppose I wasn't too big into the whole community thing. So I'm like, well, I don't have to get to know much of this, like these people. And it also gave us the opportunity, or me the opportunity, to see a lot of different preaching styles. And that was cool. So I've kind of determined which ones I'm like, all right, I like that one the most.
Okay.
And, yeah, so, again, God's hand, we lived right by each other, somehow ended up meeting. And it brought me back into the whole thing. Okay, so then that job ends. My side of it ends. So the way that the industry works for me, when your job's over, you kind of move on to the next one, right?
And sometimes quite literally move on.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to make money in the industry, you're moving. That's pretty much how it works. Like, especially young. Like, if you want to keep learning, keep moving up, and keep making more money, you're moving.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you're willing to move, they're willing to pay you more.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for me, they were like, we're going to transfer you to Florida. And I'm like, have you guys read stories about Florida?
There's alligators
There's bath salts, too.
and a lot of old people who are delightful.
Yesterday, there was an email that came out that was like, there's 2 flaggers in Florida, and somebody stopped and gave them bottles of water. Just like, hey, you're thirsty, here's a bottle of water. One of them was dead now, and one of them is in the ER.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Right. And that's Florida. I don't know.
So you didn't want to go to
So
Florida?
Florida's off the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to go to Florida. The podcast that I listen to on a regular basis, they always tell like ridiculously stupid stories.
Okay.
And when it's in Florida, like there's an alarm that goes off because it's that often.
And there's not much more south you can go in Texas.
Right. But the company that I worked for was out of Florida.
Oh, okay.
So they're like, we're going to transfer you back there. And I'm like, my girlfriend is in Texas. I'm not going. So I knew a project manager that had just gone up to Corpus Christi. And but I take that back. I didn't know him yet. But a project manager from my company had just gone there. So the engineer that I was working with for the owner at that place was like, hey, I know some people up in Corpus. Maybe call them. So I made a phone call, and he's like, oh, I just came from your company. Like, I've got your resume now. Why don't you come up here? So I went up there and interviewed. And then when they called me to be like, oh, we're transferring you to Florida, I was like, actually, I'm leaving the company.
Yeah. Gotten out.
Yep. So I ended up in Corpus Christi. Brenda stayed in Mercedes? Yeah.
I was still down in the valley.
Yeah.
A little bit longer.
Yeah, she couldn't leave yet. Plus, we weren't married yet. So we did the whole long distance thing for a minute, which looking at it now, it was a 2-hour drive.
I was going to say, Shane did long distance for
I was gonna say, for a long
while.
time.
Different time zones.
Yeah.
Different states.
And looking at it now, I'm like, it was a 2-hour difference between us that I do on a daily basis now.
True.
When you put it that way.
But it wasn't fun. Long distance isn't fun.
I didn't need to be away that long, but it was easier to
We
just
made
have
it
a
work.
house there.
Get us to Washington. How did we get to Washington?
Well, that's where, when I look back on it, I'm going to tell my version of it. So,
He does have a microphone. So.
yeah, right? So eventually Brenda moves up with me, and we're married, we live together, and it's COVID. So, Corpus apparently is not a very religious area of Texas. Texas in general is, but Corpus isn't really. There was a series of Lutheran churches, but nothing with enough attendance to hire on a DCE.
Okay.
Right? Especially not during COVID. So it was difficult for Brenda to find work there. So she started working for a senior living facility, but was like, well, I don't want to get out of the whole ministry side of things. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So there was a youth gathering that's going on, and there was a team that was kind of building in Houston. And she's like, well, I can drive there, so I could volunteer for this and keep the ministry side alive while I'm still doing this at the senior living facility. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. They were cool with it. So she was doing that and was on a team with Amy Bird and you, Dan Weber.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about where you guys were located. Nothing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat point, because when my job came to an end, it came to an end because there were some issues in Florida. Actually, there's a YouTube video out now at this point, so I could talk about it. A bridge collapsed in Florida.
Okay.
And it was a pedestrian bridge, but there were a couple fatalities involved. And the engineering firm that designed that bridge was also the designer of our bridge. So basically, they were like, hey, we need to look at these calculations again and make sure everything's good. In the meantime, we're going to either lay everyone off or transfer everybody.
Wow.
So in the process of doing that, my friend that sat next to me got a new job, because he's like, well, I'm just going to leave. And I started talking to him, and I'm like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going to Seattle. If you want to come up there, they're looking for somebody else. So I'm like, all right, that's cool. I'll talk to him. So I started talking to the people up here. We ended up here, right? And then Brenda's like, oh, the leader of my team for the youth gathering is the pastor up there. And I'm like, huh, interesting. Oh, okay. So obviously she started working here.
Well, by the way, let me interject here. Amy Bird, and Amy doesn't work here, but Amy was the pastor's wife here, and we're a committed member of St. Luke's. And right away we're like, hey, you should come work at St. Luke's. And Brenda said no for like a year and a half. So yada yada yada. Eventually, she broke down and joined the team
lived
here.
up in Mount Lake Terrace.
You're not wrong. I just there was many offers and phone calls, and but seriously, like. So what are you doing for work? Because seriously. So yes, so then we get to work together.
Yeah, and again, looking back at it, it doesn't seem like this wasn't planned. Even though I didn't know anything about this, it all worked out that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting,
It's pretty cool,
right? Mm-hmm. So then we get up here, and now I'm a regular churchgoer after COVID.
Yeah.
Because we were going to Mount Lake Terrace there for a minute with Sean Barry. Mm-hmm. And he was my gym partner, too.
Yeah. Great pastor up north.
Pastor.
Yeah. Yep. And not so much now that I'm down here, because it's harder to drive that far. Well, not that I haven't been doing it, but it's harder to get there that early. So then we moved to Mount Lake Terrace, and we started looking, because we moved here, obviously, for my work. And then Brenda got kind of little side jobs until she accepted the one with you guys. And then they raised our rent to the point where it was basically like the price of a mortgage. Right? So we're like, we might as well try to find a house. I don't see us leaving here. There's enough work for me here. And
I didn't want to leave.
And Brenda doesn't. I felt bad, too, because I'm like, you've been moving for my work. So, like, how long am I supposed to keep that up? I don't want to. And I don't want to move anymore either. I've been doing this for a long time at this point.
As he said several times, he's getting old.
I am. I'm falling apart.
Time to settle down.
It is. So, we started looking for houses. So, the first house was a little off-putting. Because we went there, and it was like, well, it opened at this much, and it's going to sell for well over $100,000 more. And I'm like... yeah, we can't do this. All right. So then we kind of put it off for like 6 months, almost, about, from there. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, all right, well, now they're raising our rent up to the point where, like, it's a lot. So let's look again. But we decided, okay, we're not buying a house unless we go there and absolutely fall in love with it. So then the first one that we look at, we're like, oh, gosh. Okay. So Brenda's like, basically since I don't say since we met, because I don't remember when you brought this up, but for a long time she's been telling me, like, if we ever owned a house, I want a fig tree.
Okay.
So
very specific thing.
Very specific, right? So we get to this house and we look, and what's in the yard?
Nice.
This 20-some-year-old fig tree. And I'm like, okay. Interesting. What are we looking at for price? And he's like, oh, well, she just dropped it down to exactly what you can afford. And I'm like, huh. Okay. So I'm like, we went out to dinner that night. I'm like, hey, maybe we should put a bid on it. Because both of us, it's the first house we looked at. We looked at one more that night, and it was like, we don't like this one.
Not the other one.
So we put the bid in. There were none. It had been on the market for a month, no bids, just lower the price to what we could have and exactly what we wanted. So we put a letter in with it, and turns out we look good on paper.
Yeah, all right.
But also, all of a sudden, there was competition. There were other people.
Hold on.
Yeah.
We'll get there. The letter matters in this story.
What am I even doing here?
So the letter goes in with our bid, and so she works in church work, and I build public transportation. Like, we look good on paper when you explain it that way, right? And then I get a call that's like, hey, so somebody else put one in right after you, and he's $20,000 more than you, and there's an escalation clause, so no matter what you put in, he's above you. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna stay where we are.
Because we can't give
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Can't.
He's like, seriously, that's it? And I'm like, all our cards are on the table. I have to more or less hope that she doesn't need money, the person selling the house, and she's going to read the letter.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. Well, that's it. That's where we're at.
Sounds freeing, too. That's what it is.
He called me about 20 minutes later and was like, you're not going to believe this, but she chose you guys.
That's awesome.
Right? So I'm like, okay. We got to do the inspection with the house. And I'm like, at this point, none of this makes any sense. We shouldn't have got it. Like, not in the housing market that it was. So
Yeah.
the whole thing doesn't make sense. Plus, it's the perfect house. I'm like, it would make more sense if we went into the inspection and there was nothing wrong at this point. If they looked at it and they're like, this is perfect. It would make more sense than if we went in and they're like, yeah, there's a lot wrong.
Right.
So we went in, we had the inspector go through, and he's like, this is the best house I've seen in the last 20 years. And I'm like, yep.
Of course it is.
Of course. That makes sense. So now, there we go. We're in that house. And it's closer to Brenda's work. It's further from mine. So for me, now I have to drive. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to leave the house by 4:30. And I would get to work about 5:30, because at that time there's no traffic. But then coming home was about 2.5 hours. And as soon as the summer started, the traffic in the morning was awful. I don't know why. And going home, it's even worse. So I'm like, I don't get it. So it took 2.5 hours to get to work for like 3 days in a row. And I'm like, all right. I get to work on the third day, and I'm like, I can't do this. This is just too much. And one of the guys that I work with is like, hey, I just got hired on this job right down by, he's like, it's an exit down from my house, which is about 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so from our house. 20, something like that. He's like, maybe look there if they're looking for somebody. So I'm like, all right, maybe I should take a look. So I look. 2 hours prior to me looking, the job was posted. Yeah. And I'm like, So at this point, I can't help but look back and be like, all right, God's hand's been in this.
Yeah.
Because too much of this stuff works out perfect, and I don't feel like it should.
Yeah.
But it's cool
Yeah.
to look back on it. But at this point now, I'm like, again, 2 hours earlier,
All right.
it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't need to. So now I'm kind of looking forward, like you were saying before. The process has got me here safely. So would, I guess, putting trust that it's going to continue, right? So now I'm not looking back like, this is why that happened. I can look back through most of my childhood and be like, I don't necessarily think I should be here, but I'm here for some sort of reason.
Yeah.
And all these things worked out to get me sitting right here.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to look forward like, okay, this has to be continuing Like, it has to happen for a reason.
Yeah. So I hear you saying sometimes we can look back. Oftentimes we can look back and see how things worked out is maybe a normal way of saying it. But as Christians, we might say how God was providing or leading or guiding or blessing. And oftentimes that's maybe not easy, but I think that's a normal thing to look back and see God's hand.
Right.
And then maybe I'll use the word maturity. Like as we grow in our faith and mature, maybe that window starts to shrink, and all of a sudden, instead of having to look 10 years back, I can look at last week and see that God provided. And then it gets even closer of like, oh, I can actually look around me. At this table, I have a community and friends. Oh, that's like God providing. And then scary thought, maybe start even looking into the future and like, oh, I might not have to worry about that because God's good. Which doesn't always mean it works out. I mean, thinking back like your discipline story, that wasn't fun. So God providing doesn't always mean everything's just awesome and smooth and easy. Sometimes it might be terrible. But Psalm 23, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. Like even when it's bad, God's providing. Looking back to looking more recently back to looking around to scary thought, like what if God actually has tomorrow in hand? Oh.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like I'm looking towards the future. Like just assuming this is all going to work.
Yeah.
Because I don't see a reason why it wouldn't. It would make more sense if everything works out perfectly.
But I think, I don't know that we look at it's going to be perfect in the future, but I think it's like it's going to work out the way it needs to work out. Yeah. Yeah,
so even perfectly that I think I hear both of you using those words differently. So one, I'd be like one way people use perfect is everything comes up roses for me. And that's different than everything's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be whole as God wants it to be, that perfect rather than everything in my favor. Because the Bible doesn't necessarily promise you're going to get every promotion and every good medical diagnosis. But even if it's a scary diagnosis, God's going to be with you and he's going to work through it. And you might be a witness, and like all these beautiful things might happen even in a horrible time. And other times he's going to say, yeah, I would gladly heal you of that miraculously or through doctors. And I go, God provided in that way. So just that Adam, when we were talking on Sunday morning, just like seeing that peace in you of like, oh, God's good. He's got it in here and now. It's really encouraging. Yeah. It's like, his grace has brought me safe this far. His grace will lead me home. Mm-hmm. Shane, you want to sing for us?
No.
Singer. It's one of these.
Singer was one of them.
No.
So we're not trying to be a salesperson for Jesus here. And if you find yourself sailing or shoemaking, God will be with you there. No, I'll stop.
But yeah, it is interesting because I feel like I've come a long way in that sense. Where like, it's not that I ever was like not praying or didn't believe. I just didn't feel like necessarily church was the thing. Like I didn't necessarily need the community around. It is cool.
Yeah.
But I guess I never really paid close enough attention to be like, I guess society at this point kind of pushes you to think it's all you. Like you're doing this. It's all on you. Like you did everything. You got yourself to where you're at. Like it's all you.
Right.
When it's interesting when you're kind of like, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Like I did a good amount, but without the blessings that I've had in my life, I wouldn't be anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
Adam, this has been so great to hear more. We've talked before, obviously. I know you a little bit. People listening, I just want to pause and highlight every person you know or meet has a backstory. And maybe this is a little bit longer of a podcast than you're used to, but even 90 minutes, I feel like I've got to hear so much from you and know so much more about who you are, and I look forward to digging more. That somebody listening, you could have a friend over for a coffee or beer or a walk, and you don't have to take 3 days out of your schedule or, we're going to meet every Thursday for an hour until I get to know you. It can be simple as 1 hour. I mean, we goofed around for the first half hour of this. So it's probably
been 90 minutes.
It's probably been an hour of hearing from your story, and I interrupted a lot. And so if listening or watching right now, I would encourage you, maybe it's your spouse or your neighbor or a parent or a coworker or a friend, a teammate, carve out an hour or two and say, I would love to just get to hear from you. And then do your best to not interrupt and just listen and ask questions because you're interested, not because there's a test. But just, this has been great. Like, we didn't have a script. It was just like, hey, you want to come hang out and record? I want to hear your story, and we'll just see where it goes. And so this has been good for me. People listening and watching, none of us are professional people at like interviews. we didn't go to school. We just kind of care about each other and act interested, and we'll just see what happens with that. Yeah. Act interested. Just being silly. Brenda, any final thoughts as spouse of our special guest today?
I think it was really encouraging to hear you share all of that kind of, I've heard a lot of these pieces and some of them multiple times, but to hear it all together, and I think to hear how you're seeing your relationship with God now is encouraging. And like, I don't know, I think that's really hopeful. And I like hearing you talk about that stuff.
So I mentioned earlier, you might talk to a coworker, friend, neighbor, but even the spouse you live with might want to hear from you. Yeah. Or have something, even if you think you know everything about your spouse, to give them the chance to express themselves might be a really beautiful gift for both of you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shane, any final thoughts here as we land today?
Oh, I think it's just super interesting just hearing how like you're kind of in your story so far, like how one little thing could have changed everything, but you're here right now. Like if you weren't on Bumble for more than 15 seconds that day,
right?
Mm-hmm. It's just like never would have met Brenda. Probably never would have ended up in Washington, Seattle. Like maybe who knows? Like it's all just crazy, just how of a fine line our story is, but it got us to where we're at.
Right.
Yeah. Adam, thanks for being here. Brenda, thanks for being here. Shane, thank you for being here. Yeah. Listeners, viewers, thanks for being part of the conversation. We hope it's entertaining. We hope it's encouraging. But our big hope is that this would encourage and inspire you to begin a conversation or continue one with somebody else in real life. Maybe that is meeting Adam or Brenda. Show up on a Sunday morning here in St. Luke's. He's the bearded fellow running around, pulling the cart of Brenda's things.
I'm a worship coordinator.
He's also a worship coordinator. He unlocks doors. He coordinates worship. All right. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, viewers, listeners. We'll catch you next time.
That's the end of the episode, but we want to continue the conversation. Continue the conversation by sharing this episode, subscribing, or leaving a review. Connect with us on Instagram at 2414podcast. Connect with us through email at 2414@stlukes-church.com. Or best of all, keep the conversation going by inviting someone to process with you, so that you can each walk away with more understanding that leads to more conversation as the journey continues. If you happen to be in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington, stop by on a Sunday morning and say hi. 2414 is a podcast produced by St. Luke's Lutheran Church in Federal Way, Washington. To find more content, discover upcoming opportunities to connect in person, or to support the show, head on over to stlukes-church.com. Thanks for walking with us.